Vegas. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining the Philly Tech Entrepreneurs podcast. My name is Dave. I'm your host, and I'm talking today with Eric. Eric is a member of our community, a very engaged member at that. But outside of that, he's also the principal wealth manager at Savvy Wealth. Savvy was established back in 2021, and Eric brings 12 plus years of ultra high net worth family investment management experience to Savvy. He currently lives in media with his wife, young son, rescue dog, and is, as far as I can tell, a golf addict and enjoys also staying fit. So happy to talk with you today, Eric, a little bit about personal finance, risk management, entrepreneurship. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Glad to be here. How about yourself?
Doing well as well. Excited about kicking off just kind of new podcast for the community, featuring members and learning from their expertise. You mentioned you live out in media. I just want to learn a little bit more about your relationship with Philly. How, you're born here, how long you've been here?
Yeah, so I grew up outside of New York City in Poughkeepsie. Went to St. Joe's, and so I've been in the area, in the Philly area ever since. I loved the Philly area. It wasn't maybe high up on my list when when I was in high school, but I've grown to love Philly a lot. I lived in Center City for 6 or 7 years in Society Hill. Wonderful place. Would have loved to stay, but we just made the choice, wife and I, to raise our family out here in media. And media is also a great little town that that we felt was a good place to be in the burbs.
Yeah, super cool. You do hear that from time to time that Philly wasn't necessarily what everybody was always imagining from the start, but then when they get here, they really like it. That was my experience as well. I'm not originally from the area, from Boston, and had done a bunch of traveling, and we kind of settled here down on a whim, and have really enjoyed it ever since the last 5 years or so. Let's talk about everybody's kind of favorite topic, money, I guess. Love it or hate it. In sort of personal finance for entrepreneurs, to my knowledge, and you work with entrepreneurs, high net worth individuals, business owners. Um, Entrepreneurs are not necessarily known for being great with managing their personal finances. We're good at maybe trying to make money and maybe investing money in various businesses to grow them and things like that. But certain things related to personal finance sometimes slip through the cracks. Tell us a little bit about your experience, personal finance, working with business owners, your experience individually as well, kind of running, almost operating as an independent business within Savvy.
Yeah, so my background is working with lots of successful business owners, with call it $10+ million. Maybe they sold businesses, maybe they're now investing in other businesses, or still operating a business. And yeah, I mean, I see a wide range of individuals, and how they manage their own money can be very different. But I think you touched on a point where it's you find it difficult as an entrepreneur to manage your finances, and I would tend to agree with that. I think entrepreneurs are creative people. They have visions. They're visionary folks who are looking to change, start a business, change something, create something that doesn't exist. And I think what happens in my experience is they get very excited about other people doing the same things, and so they might want to invest. As far as like managing your investments, right? They might want to invest in somebody they know or some business idea that's really interesting, and that can easily get out of control unless you really have a top-down view of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And so I think that's one of the main things I've seen over my time working with that type of client, and entrepreneur, is that it's not fun to think about their asset allocation or their cash flow, or even to really assess their risk tolerance, independently assess their risk tolerance. But I think those are all things that are very important in order for long-term success, because it's really it's a long-term thing. You really have to be at it every day, every week, every month to be successful at investing and sort of managing your finances. There's more to it, of course, than just like finding an investment idea that's great. I think it's cash flow planning. It's managing your taxes. It's managing your family relationships, making sure that your kids are on board with everything that you're doing or will be doing for them. So yeah, I mean, I understand it's difficult. It's something I struggle with, of course, too. Like I do it for my job, but is it the thing I want to do when I come home every night? Not really.
I
But
hear you.
I think you have to sort of cut out time for that and find partners who are going to help you get where you need to be.
Makes sense. I mean, you mentioned obviously, working with ultra high net worth individuals, $10 million plus and stuff, which is obviously a great aspiration for many of us. Not everyone is there yet. But we still need to be thinking about personal finances. And then obviously that journey kind of evolves, I believe, along the way as you kind of have more to work with and you start maybe diversifying your allocations and things like that. For people that are, earlier on in the journey, looking to kind of get started out, but build, good foundation, good habits, what are some of the things that you kind of recommend?
So I think understanding your cash flow needs is really important. I think there's lots of people I've come across them in my clients. I've come across this issue personally. It can be very hard when you have different credit cards, you have bank accounts here and there. You might have a joint account with your spouse, you might not, and it tracking it all can be very difficult. I think there are tools these days. Speaking of technology, there are tools these days that can help you organize that. Um, and I think utilizing those and just having a really good idea. Like if someone were to ask you, like, how much do you spend in a year? It's very great to know that number. Not only just kind of plan for yourself, but I think also to assess your risk tolerance as it relates to starting a business. Because when you're starting a business, you don't have any income, and you need to know what you're drawing down, personally. And of course, it helps to keep that as low as possible. We all need money to live, and but I think the more comfortable you are with that, the more willing you are to be able to go for that big idea, to be able to really spend time on something where you think you can make a difference and you can start a business that's really successful.
Absolutely. On the topic of technology, since you brought it up, I have a tool that I use for that, and I'm sure you have used, if you're not using one for yourself, you've probably recommended some of the clients and maybe are aware of some of their pros and cons. But just to kind of throw one out there, which I have no affiliation with, by the way, is Personal Capital's tracker, although I think they recently rebranded to Empower. But as an app, it's basically allows you to kind of connect all your credit cards, bank accounts, and will help you with things like cash flow management, your transactions, and you can kind of see timeline views and things like that. I personally found that really helpful because to your point, you can be very surprised at what your cash flow is or isn't when you actually see the numbers there. Certain things kind of fall on days and months that maybe you weren't expecting, or some unexpected expenses continue to kind of happen almost frequently. If you haven't used something like Personal Capital, are there other technology tools that you could throw out there that we might all benefit from?
Yeah, I mean, I've used Mint in the past, and I do also have the benefit of being a financial professional, so I do have some other tools that maybe only advisors have. But we have a tool called eMoney, which I've been really impressed with their ability to help advisors work with clients tracking their expenses. It's really like pulling in lots of different types of accounts, which I think that's the key. Is you want to be able to find a tool that can bring in everything that you have, all your different credit cards, everything. Because if you're missing something, that can be really important. Because maybe that $5,000 home improvement project went onto that card or something like that. But I think you're right. I think finding ways to make this as easy as possible for everybody should be our goal. But it's definitely something that I think the more knowledge you have about your situation, the better you're going to be.
Yeah, knowledge is power for sure. Risk tolerance, risk management, it's a phrase, you've kind of used already, and I think it's super important because it's one of the early things you need to establish about yourself and also discuss with, important key family members and things like that, because it really dictates the downstream effect of what you do with your finances and things like that. What are some of the different, kind of risk profiles? How does that affect, decision making around cash flow management and asset allocation, kind of everything that the world that you're involved in?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it in two ways. You have sort of your willingness to take risk, which is, I think, for all of, for the group, and I think for entrepreneurs in general, it's pretty high. Like if you're willing to forego steady income or a salary of some kind, say, and to go start a business, draw money to begin something where you're expected to grow it to eventually produce cash flow for yourself, or others, I think, you have a high risk tolerance or a high, willingness to take risk. Now, I think, in public investing world, I mean, I think you can assess that by, sort of tracking your personal investing, what you sold, when you sold it, were you concerned in 2020 and 2008, things like that. But I think entrepreneurs are generally high on that spectrum. The other one is your ability to take risk. And this is where, this is where the cash flow comes in. So if you've really, built out your budget, built out, your spending habits, and how much money you're spending, you can think about, well, how many years of, spending do I have personally to make my idea work, to make my business idea work. And this is something, this is something that a lot of clients haven't really thought about their spending, or how many years of spending do they want to feel comfortable about either investing in the market or starting a business, foregoing income, starting a business. So it was something that I thought about in my transition to Savvy, where I'm, definitely operating as an independent advisor on my own, finding my own clients. And I needed to think about that personally, like, okay, well, how much am I spending? How many years, do I really have to make this work? And am I comfortable with that? And I really had to go through those steps to get myself to, really find my risk tolerance, to find where I was comfortable making that decision. And I think everybody who's starting a business should go through that, exercise, to figure out what they can afford, as far as a risk tolerance to take on, and what they're willing to. But I think having that well thought out can really give you the confidence to go chase your idea. Whereas before, if you didn't know about that kind of stuff, you might take the leap without really fully understanding, well, if I don't do this in a year, then I might have to go take an expensive fundraising, raise money in an expensive way, or go take debt that I don't want to take on, or take on another partner that I don't want to do. Like you might have to make decisions that are not comfortable with at this point.
Yeah, it's a real kind of interesting concept. I don't know. I always think of myself as being somewhat risk averse. I tend to try to take we'll call it small bites, or what I think of as somewhat small risks, but it's also within the realm of being often a self-funded entrepreneur who invests, their own money in projects. And some of those projects, work and some of them don't. So I think maybe within the grand scheme of things, I probably am, as you described, kind of a high risk individual compared to many. But within this group of like high risk individuals, I think of myself as a low risk within that bubble. I'm also someone that honestly I enjoy personal finance, and I kind of like to go through the exercises that you mentioned fairly often. Not everybody does. How often personal finance is so dynamic, it's changing. One day you have X, the next day you might have Y, whatever it is, different cash flows. How often do you generally kind of encourage people to sit down and kind of do that math and plan things out?
I mean, it's of course not something you need to do every day. I don't even, I mean, sure, I help clients do it all the time. It's not something that I want to do for clients every day, nor do I think that's helpful, really. I think, if something big has changed, like, we just bought a house last year. I think we're going to have, our expense profile is going to change a little bit. I might, start looking at that in 6 months to 9 months, just kind of figure out what that year looks like. If something big has changed, I'd recommend examining it further. You can check in on it once a year, once every couple of years, something like that. Or as you're getting ready to launch a business, or as you're getting ready to make a decision with your career or with your business, I think that's probably a time to really, polish that stuff up and feel comfortable about where you are.
Makes sense. Sort of final question. I mean, a wealth manager is somewhat of a specific role that, many it's assumed that, you don't usually work with one unless you have wealth to manage. What are the right times for people to be kind of thinking about, whether or not they should be investing in a dedicated individual to help manage their wealth? And what are some of the benefits that working with someone such as yourself kind of brings to the table over, whatever other resources people can kind of get online?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. Something we grapple with every day with clients, right? Like they're always, talking about um,
Robo investing, or I don't know,
right, yeah, like all these great tools out
Yeah.
there. I think feedback we've seen in surveys and feedback from clients, I mean, investing and managing your finances, they're not just something a tool can replace, technology can replace. I think there are many ways that technology can help that process, make it more efficient, help people like myself work with clients in better, more, you know, better, more higher value added ways that they want, higher service level. But I think at the end of the day, personal finance, investing, um, it's very personal. You really need to understand emotionally how your client or your partner is wired in order to help them make the best decisions possible. Because it's not just about building a portfolio and letting it ride. I mean, I think we've all had that. If you've ever invested at all, you've had that scenario where you just bought something and it goes down. And you're like, oh my god. So I think a system can't really help you with that. I think you need to find somebody that you trust, that you can bounce ideas off of. And again, I think it's not always, there are certain people that are focused on investments and portfolios and things like that. You obviously need wealth for that. I think there are plenty of other decisions to be made, just as we were talking about with cash flow, with starting a business, with the structuring of your business, both legal, tax, and otherwise. That can be very helpful to have a partner, has experience with that and can help you sort of work through those issues, as you go. And also just kind of like, keeping an eye on, well, what are my goals in life? Like where do I see myself? Am I going to start a bunch of businesses until I'm 80 years old? Or do you want to, get to a point, and do you want to step back? How do you want to involve your kids in what you're doing? I think that's a really important thing that I like to help clients with, is getting their kids involved in what they're doing and how they're doing it, whether that's their investing philosophy, their estate planning, managing their own finances. I think all of those things are very important. And my clients find it difficult to have those conversations sometimes. I mean, talking about money is not it's not the number one, bar topic. And, it's certainly not the number one, topic in family, at the family dinner table either. So I think we as independent, advisors, partners are there to help with those kind of conversations.
Yeah, it's a great point. My parents are not high net worth individuals, but I do think that I don't know, it always feels a little maybe taboo or something for parents to
Yeah.
talk with their children about, money and kind of like what they have and what they're doing. And to this day, it's like still like a little bit of a black box. I mean, like you kind of know sort of where you are, but but still like the exact numbers and sort of how everybody's allocating them and things like that is still a little bit of a question mark. And I think, it's time we kind of break down that barrier. So really appreciate you sharing some of this wisdom with us, Eric. Obviously, if someone would like to get in touch with you, we're in Slack, and they could shoot you a message. But for those, who might be kind of viewing this and they're not, necessarily familiar with PTE, not in the Slack community that we run, how should they get in touch?
Yeah, so my email is eric.yost@savvyadvisors.com. So ERICH period YOST at savvyadvisors.com. And yeah, that's the best way to reach me. But yeah, I'll be at all the meetups, and I'll see you guys at Slack, um, you know, over the course of the next several months.
Awesome. Really appreciate it today. Thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.